something that should have happened 40 years ago. That's the kind of thing that we should have already been like, oh yeah, okay. The We are no longer, but we're well past that. We're in this position where we need to um, actually be focused completely on reforming our entire economy. And the only way left to do that, is to bite the bullet, accept that we are in a massive emergency, a massive crisis, uh, uh, and to literally declare a war and move into a war economy. And I'm talking like we are going to need things like full scale rationing. We are going to need things like people are going to have to stop using fossil fuels on a mass organized scale. We're going to have to organize the weaning of the populace off of fossil fuels. We are going to have to simply accept that certain things that we have taken for granted in our society are going to have to stop. Because what's going to happen, okay, if we do not, like, we've already passed peak oil, right? We've already passed the peak oil threshold, right? So it's going to just be a chaotic shit show of absurd nonsense while corporations actively work to undercut the needs of the populace in order to hoard as much of these resources for themselves as they can. And it's not, that's going to be a much more difficult transition, because the populace is suddenly going to find themselves without a resource, assuming that they would have it previously, and they're going to be told, oh well, just deal with it, right? Oh well, and the corporations, the sociopaths, are just going to say what they always say, right? We need to be we need to be transitioning into this war economy without even talking to the capitalists. They should not be part of this conversation. I mean, my view is very simple. They should have their assets stripped. We should launch a Hague inquiry into the many crimes that they've committed against us. The climate change emergency that we're in is their fault, right? It is their fault. Like, you don't fund, like, imagine if the Nazis were coming to us to attack us, right? And these corporations were pumping pro-Nazi propaganda into the society. Yeah, we would put them on trial, right? We would arrest them, and we would at least incarcerate them, if not hang them for their treasons. Uh, and this is exactly, like, we know, we have the evidence, we have the papers. We know that these oil industry executives knew that climate change was real. They knew that it was damaging people. They knew that it was going to cause problems moving forward. And then instead of going, oh damn, like, oh okay, like, this is a major problem, this is a major crisis, instead of informing the populace, saying, we ourselves are just learning about this, so we are going to work with your leadership and work together in order to transition to something that is not so destructive, that is not going to completely decimate the entire environment and thereby the entire economy and the entire society. We're going to start making that transition now, back in the 70s when they knew about it. Instead, they actively funded, right? This is what they did. They actively funded anti-climate change propaganda to lie to the populace, to deceive the populace, to keep the populace complacent and ensured that, no, this is all taken care of. Our leaders, our capitalist owners are taking care of this. We've been completely sold out by these people. They should go to jail for it. They should go to jail for a long time. They should have their assets stripped, and they should not be part of the conversation any longer. We should transition to a war economy and leave these sociopaths behind, and keep them out of the conversation completely. The like one of the things that I think about a lot, and I talk about this a lot, right? The capitalists are more than willing to spend extra money to keep you uh, out of the conversation, right? This is why they're willing to spend more money in order to fund any kind of welfare state that doesn't look like a basic income, right? They will spend more money in order to maintain the system of poverty, to keep people homeless. They will pay for more shelters. They will pay for more. They will pay for more food banks. They will pay for more policing. Certainly, they will pay more for these things because it means the power remains in their hands. That they are the ones that get to make the decisions. And if you want to make a decision for yourself based on your own life, too bad. You have to work for capitalists. It's very simple, right? And if you put forward an idea and you said, oh, hey, giving every individual person the money they need in order to feed and shelter themselves, instead of having food banks and shelters and people organizing food and organizing these places and paying rent on buildings and doing all this kind of stuff, it would just be cheaper to give people the money and let them just go to the grocery store and go pay rent, right? It would just be cheaper and more efficient. But it would also mean that they could say, oh, that job is bad and its labor conditions are horrible. And the capitalists that run it are sociopaths who are obviously just trying to vampire suck out our lives. So obviously I'm not going to work for those people. And the capitalists can't have that, right? The capitalists can't have workers having any shred of leverage in the conversation. The capitalists need workers to be desperate. They need workers to be in a position where they're forced to sell their labor to a billionaire-dominated market. That they can't have, workers are not permitted to have an alternative to that. And the capitalists are more than willing to spend extra to ensure that this is the case. Because capitalists are lazy, stupid, and illiterate. They don't know how to do anything. They don't have jobs. They can't produce anything. They don't know how to do anything, right? They hire people to do that with the money that they were born into. They're not interested in having to learn a skill or a trade or any of this kind of stuff. They're not interested in participating in a community of people who are around them. They want to live as kings and gods inside their little gated communities, and they want everybody else to do their work for them. They want hand delivered blowjobs. Like they don't want to suddenly have to participate in a community. They're not interested in that. And clearly, right? Like if they were, and they found out that their activity was destroying the society and destroying the environment and destroying everything, they would go, oh, okay, we've got to do something about that. How concerning, right? And this idea that they couldn't is absurd because they've done it before. Back throughout the 80s, there was an aerosol concern, right? Aerosols were actually punching holes in the ozone layer, right? And this was brought forward. Something was done about it. It stopped. It was fixed. So we can do it. It's obvious we can do it. And it's so absurd how it's getting cheaper and cheaper to resolve this problem as time goes forward because people are starting to figure out more and more about it. And we're still dragging our heels about it. We're still taking our time about it because these sociopaths refuse to actually relinquish a single shred of power. They legitimately refuse to help anyone, and they refuse to believe, because their death cult ideology makes it so that they refuse to understand or believe that, hey, if you help people, then they will help the society, right? But they're like, capitalists are sociopaths, right? They're like, no, if somebody helped me, I would immediately stab them in the back, throw them under the bus, and abandon them in a ditch. And then I would laugh as I go, ha ha, they helped me. How stupid and pathetic are they? Because they're sociopaths, and that's how they think. That they'll accept all, yeah, I'll take that handout, absolutely, and then I'll immediately betray that person the second I possibly can. Like they're imposters. Like if you're playing a game and you're trying to figure out who the imposters are, who are betraying everybody and murdering everybody, there they are. They're the capitalists, right? They're the imposters. We should get rid of them. Eject them out the airlock. Let's go. And what we need to be doing, no doubt, at this, and we don't have options. Like, our options are now completely diminished. We are out of options. We need to be passing a full scale basic income, and then we need to actively disrupt every single polluter. We need to actively shut their factories down. We need to actively stop polluting. We need to pass a basic income so that the people, the workers, the victims of these enterprises can go and find food, find shelter without concern, right? That the solution can no longer be, you got to just go find another job, i.e., you got to go work for another sociopathic capitalist. That doesn't work anymore. That's over, right? That's over. It's done. It's finished. We can't resolve this problem by getting another job. That's not going to happen, right? We need to pass a basic income to make sure that nobody falls through the cracks, so that everybody has the basic needs that they have, so that we can transition to a war economy to fight this monolithic giant of our own creation that we refuse to acknowledge, outside of some just like genial hand waving, right? Literally, like imagine the Nazis were driving tanks towards us right now, that they were blaring at the top of their lungs and screaming how they were going to decimate our cities, commit a genocide against our people, kidnap and enslave other people, and then declare themselves as gods and kings while doing it. And then imagine that a third of the population was denying that it existed, and then another third of the population was actually on board with this idea and going like, yeah, sure, that's totally fine. Like, this is the absurd craziness that we live in today. Like, we live in this period of mass absurdity. And it's massively absurd that we're facing this enormous crises, and there are still people who are funding anti-climate change propaganda, which I consider to be the same level as funding Nazi propaganda. These people should be incarcerated and tried as traitors. And instead of actually doing something rational, like passing a basic income, actually starting to shut down the polluters completely, right? What do? We take hostages. We're just like, oh, you can't shut down that factory. Oh, think of all the jobs, right? Fuck those jobs. Fuck those jobs. Those jobs need to stop. We need to pass a basic income, make sure that those workers are safe. Fuck those jobs. They're gone. They're gone. You understand? And we're just being hand-wringing children about it. We're just being childish about it. Like, for fuck's sake, there are people alive today, their nieces, nephews, boys, girls, daughters, brothers, right? They are going to curse our names. They are going to create art that treats our generation and the generation before ours as demons. They're going to look at us like satanic, evil, barbaric psychopaths. They are going to create stories that paint the boomer generation, certainly. And if we don't get off our asses and do something, the millennials will go right along with it. We will be treated like absolute, just evil, maniacal, sociopathic demons. And they are right. They are absolutely right to treat us that way. If I was in Gen Z, right? If I was one of these kids that was born in 2000, right? If I was under the age of 20, I would be protesting. All I would do is spend my time organizing strikes. That's all I would spend my time doing. I would organize student strikes. I would organize worker strikes. I would have people. I would find the busiest intersection I could find, and I would put sit-down strikes right there. I would ensure that the gears of capitalism stopped functioning, and that's all I would spend my time doing. Because we are abandoning the youth. We are abandoning our responsibility to the next generation, without a doubt. We are not taking it seriously. We are not actively working to improve anything. And it comes down to these fucking conservatives saying things like, oh, well, that'll only be a problem when I'm dead. And my response has become, then hurry up, get to it, die, die, so we can actually move on. Holy fuck. So good for you, Lori Lee Oates, for writing something. Start using language like a war economy. Start using language like a start calling these people traitors, because that's what they are. We need to actually be fighting back, and we are not. So I'm glad to see that someone is using their brain here in the CBC. Let's see if anyone else picks the ball up and runs with it. All right, guys, like, share, subscribe. Let people know. Clang the bell, ring the bell, talk to your neighbors, talk to the people you work with. Start organizing a union, man. Like, fuck this. Fuck this. Fuck all this. This society needs to be completely cleansed. Like, every decision we've made up until now has been completely wrong, and we need to start making some goddamn right decisions, and it needs to happen fast. Good luck. God bless.